What if one of history's greatest mystics spent decades trying to tell you something that could shatter everything you believe about your own soul, and almost no one listened? Manly Palmer Hall, the legendary occult philosopher who decoded ancient mysteries for over 70 years, spoke about Mary Magdalene in ways that went far beyond the stories you were taught in Sunday school or saw in Renaissance paintings. He saw her not as a repentant sinner or a minor character in someone else's story, but as something the institutions of power have worked for 2,000 years to make you forget. A guardian, a keeper of forbidden knowledge, the one who held the keys to the deepest mysteries of the soul itself. Hall didn't just study dusty scrolls and ancient texts for intellectual curiosity. He was searching for something that had been deliberately hidden, something that, if you truly understood it, would free you from a prison you didn't even know you were in. And at the center of that mystery stood a woman whose true identity was buried under centuries of lies, distortions, and carefully constructed illusions. The church called her a prostitute. History reduced her to a footnote. But the mystics, the ones who read between the lines and decoded the symbols, knew better. They knew she carried something so powerful, so dangerous to the systems of control, that her legacy had to be destroyed. This isn't just about religion or ancient history. This is about you, about the nature of your soul, about why you've always felt like something essential was missing from the story you were told about who you are and why you're here. What you're about to hear might disturb you. It should, because the truth, when it finally surfaces after being buried for millennia, doesn't arrive gently. It crashes through walls, it shatters illusions, and it demands that you see reality with new eyes. Manly P. Hall wasn't like other scholars. Born in 1901, he spent his entire life immersed in the mystery schools, the hidden traditions, the secret teachings that the established powers called heresy or superstition. By the time he was 27, he had written The Secret Teachings of All Ages, a massive encyclopedia of esoteric wisdom that drew from Egyptian mysteries, Greek philosophy, Christian mysticism, and traditions most people had never heard of. But Hall didn't just collect information. He was looking for a pattern, a hidden code woven through all these ancient systems, and that code kept pointing back to the same suppressed truth. There is a knowledge about the soul, about its divine origin and its path back to source, that has been systematically erased from mainstream consciousness. Not by accident, by design. The institutions that claimed to save your soul were the very ones keeping you from understanding what your soul truly is. And according to Hall, one of the most important guardians of this forbidden knowledge was Mary Magdalene herself. In lectures rarely discussed today, Hall spoke about Mary Magdalene as an initiate, someone who had passed through the ancient mystery schools and understood the deeper esoteric teachings that Jesus, or Yeshua, as the mystics call him, was actually transmitting. These weren't just moral lessons or parables about being a good person. They were initiatory keys, techniques for awakening the divine spark buried within human consciousness. Hall believed that the early Christian movement, before it was hijacked and institutionalized, was a mystery school, and Mary Magdalene was one of its highest initiates. She wasn't just a follower. She was a teacher, a spiritual equal, perhaps even the one who understood the inner teachings better than anyone else. But this knowledge, this gnosis, threatened everything the emerging church wanted to build. Because if people knew they could access the divine directly, if they understood the true nature of their souls, they wouldn't need priests, rituals, or institutions to mediate their connection to God. They would be free. And freedom, real spiritual freedom, is the one thing systems of control cannot tolerate. Think about it. Why would a woman who stood at the foot of the cross when the male disciples fled, who was the first witness to the resurrection, who according to lost gospels received private teachings from Christ himself, be reduced in history to a repentant sinner? Why would her gospel, discovered in the sands of Egypt in 1896 but suppressed for decades, be excluded from the Bible? Why would church fathers like Tertullian and Augustine warn against women teaching, against the dangers of feminine spiritual authority? The answer is simple and devastating. Mary Magdalene represented something that had to be destroyed: the divine feminine, direct gnosis, the path of inner knowing that bypasses all external authority. She was living proof that enlightenment, awakening, the return to divine consciousness, doesn't require submission to a patriarchal system. It requires only one thing: remembering who you truly are. Manly P. Hall called this the sealed library within. Imagine that inside your very consciousness there is a vast archive of knowledge, memories of your soul's journey, understanding of your divine origin, keys to awakening. But that library has been locked. The doors have been sealed shut by centuries of programming, by religious dogma that tells you you're born in sin, by materialist science that says you're just a biological accident, by systems that benefit from your spiritual amnesia. Mary Magdalene, in the esoteric tradition Hall studied, was one of the keepers of the key to that library. She knew how to unlock it, and the knowledge she guarded wasn't written in books. It was encoded in symbols, in rituals, in the very structure of the soul's journey through matter and back to spirit. Now I want to pause here and ask you something. Where are you watching this from? What city, what part of the world are you in right now? I want to know how far this message is reaching. How many souls are ready to hear what's been hidden for so long? Drop your location in the comments. Let's see how wide this awakening is spreading. Hall often spoke about the Gnostics, those early Christian mystics who were declared heretics and hunted down by the church. Their crime: they taught that salvation comes through knowledge, gnosis, direct mystical experience of the divine within. They rejected the idea of original sin. They saw the material world not as God's perfect creation, but as a flawed copy, a prison created by a false god, the demiurge, to trap divine souls in cycles of ignorance and suffering. And according to Gnostic texts, especially the ones found at Nag Hammadi in 1945, Mary Magdalene was a central figure in their cosmology. In the Gospel of Philip, she is called the companion of Christ, the one he loved more than all the disciples. In the Gospel of Mary, she receives secret visions and teaches the other disciples about the soul's ascent through hostile powers. In Pistis Sophia, one of the most complex Gnostic texts, Mary Magdalene asks more questions and receives more teachings than anyone else. She is portrayed as the most spiritually advanced, the one who excels all her fellow disciples. This wasn't romantic fanfiction or feminist revisionism. These were sacred texts written by communities who saw her as a spiritual authority, a guide, an embodied representation of Sophia, divine wisdom herself. Sophia, in Gnostic myth, is the feminine aspect of God who fell into matter, whose light became trapped in the material world. The journey of the soul is the journey of Sophia returning home, remembering her divine origin, ascending back through the archonic powers that try to keep her enslaved. And Mary Magdalene, in this framework, is Sophia incarnate. She is the divine feminine that the demiurge and his archons, those forces that feed on human ignorance and fear, most desperately want to keep suppressed. Because when Sophia awakens, when the feminine returns to her rightful place, the entire false system collapses. Manly P. Hall understood this deeply. He saw in Mary Magdalene's suppression the same pattern repeated across cultures and ages. The oracles of Delphi silenced, the priestesses of Isis forgotten, the wise women of Europe burned as witches. The divine feminine, the intuitive, mystical, direct knowing aspect of consciousness, systematically attacked and erased. Why? Because patriarchal control systems, whether religious or political, cannot function when people trust their inner knowing over external authority. The feminine doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't need a mediator. It simply knows. And that knowing, that gnosis, is the greatest threat to any system built on lies. Hall taught that the soul's journey is an initiatory path, a series of tests and revelations designed to strip away false identity and reveal the eternal self. Every mystery school from Egypt to Greece to early Christianity used the same blueprint: death and rebirth, descent into darkness and ascent into light, the shedding of the ego and the remembering of the divine spark. Mary Magdalene, in this context, wasn't just present at Christ's crucifixion and resurrection as a passive witness. She was undergoing her own initiatory death and rebirth. The 7 demons cast out of her, which literalist interpreters turned into evidence of sin or possession, were in esoteric terms the 7 veils of illusion, the 7 seals that must be broken, the 7 chakras or energy centers that must be purified and awakened. She passed through the ordeal. She faced the shadow. She died to the false self. And when she encountered the risen Christ at the tomb, she was no longer Mary the woman. She was Mary the initiate, the awakened one, the first to recognize the truth that death is an illusion and consciousness is eternal. Think about your own life right now. Haven't you always felt like something was off? Like the world you were told to accept doesn't quite make sense? Like there's a deeper reality just beneath the surface that everyone seems to be ignoring? That feeling isn't paranoia or imagination, it's your soul remembering. It's the sealed library within starting to crack open. It's the gnosis trying to break through centuries of conditioning. You're not crazy, you're waking up. And once you start to see, you can't unsee. Before we go further, if this is resonating with you, if you're feeling that spark of recognition, do me a favor. Hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts. Subscribe to this channel because what we're uncovering here isn't just interesting information. It's forbidden knowledge that powerful forces still don't want you to access. The algorithm doesn't favor truth, it favors distraction. So your engagement, your interaction, is how we keep this alive. Now let's go deeper. The Gnostic texts describe something called the archons. These are not physical beings but forces, thought forms, energies that feed on human fear, division, and ignorance. The chief archon, the demiurge, is described as a false god who believes himself to be the true creator. He fashioned the material world as a prison for divine souls, and he uses the archons, these psychic parasites, to keep humanity in a state of spiritual sleep. Sounds like ancient superstition, right? Except when you look at the world today, at systems designed to keep you distracted, addicted, divided, numb, it's hard not to see the same pattern. You're not encouraged to meditate, to seek inner truth, to question authority. You're encouraged to consume, to compete, to obey, to outsource your thinking to experts, and your spirituality to institutions. The archons don't need to be literal demons. They're the forces of control, the structures that keep you from accessing the sealed library within. And the primary weapon they've always used is the suppression of the divine feminine, the intuitive, mystical, direct knowing consciousness that Mary Magdalene embodied. Manly P. Hall wrote extensively about the fall of woman in esoteric traditions, not as a moral failing, but as a symbolic representation of the soul's descent into matter. In ancient mystery schools, the feminine was revered as the gateway to the mysteries, the priestess who guided initiates through the veils. But as patriarchal religions rose, the feminine became dangerous, something to dominate and control. The serpent, once a symbol of wisdom and Kundalini awakening, was recast as evil. The goddess became the devil, and Mary Magdalene, who in Gnostic cosmology represented the awakened feminine leading souls back to the light, was turned into a whore. This wasn't accidental editing, it was spiritual warfare. By destroying her image, they destroyed the pathway. By silencing her teachings, they silenced the very knowledge that could set you free. And it worked. For nearly 2,000 years, the memory of who she really was remained buried. But here's what they didn't count on. Truth has a frequency. It doesn't disappear. It goes underground into the mystery schools, the secret societies, the mystics and heretics who kept the flame alive. And now, in this age of unveiling, it's rising again. You can feel it. Something is shifting. Old lies are crumbling. Hidden texts are surfacing. And people like you are starting to remember. Hall believed that we are living in a pivotal moment, a time when the age of darkness, the Kali Yuga, is beginning to give way to a new cycle of light. In this transition, the divine feminine must return, not as a religion or ideology, but as a restoration of balance, a reintegration of the intuitive, mystical, heart-centered consciousness that the world has been starved of. And Mary Magdalene, symbolically and energetically, is the herald of that return. She is the one who says you don't need to wait for salvation. You don't need to beg forgiveness from a distant, judgmental God. You need to remember, you are not a sinner. You are a divine spark, a fragment of the infinite, temporarily wearing the costume of a human being. The body is not you. The personality, the fears, the social conditioning, none of it is the real you. You are the consciousness that witnesses it all, the eternal observer. The I Am presence that exists beyond time, beyond birth and death. This is the gnosis Mary Magdalene carried. This is what she taught. And this is what they tried to bury. But it's alive in you right now. In the very fact that you're here, listening to this, feeling something stir inside, questioning the official story. You're not here by accident. Your soul guided you here because it's time. Time to unlock the sealed library. Time to remember what you really are. Hall often quoted from the Hermetic texts, those ancient writings attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, which say, as above, so below. The microcosm reflects the macrocosm. The journey of the soul is the journey of the cosmos, and the suppression of Mary Magdalene, the divine feminine, mirrors the suppression of the intuitive mystical consciousness within every human being. To restore her is to restore yourself. To honor her legacy is to honor the part of you that knows truth without needing proof, that sees through illusion without needing a priest to explain it, that connects directly to source without needing an intermediary. This is the path of Gnosis, the path she walked, the path she still guards. So how do you walk it? How do you unlock that sealed library and access the knowledge that's been hidden from you? First, understand that Gnosis is not intellectual. You can't think your way into it. You can't read enough books or watch enough videos, though they can point the way. Gnosis is experiential. It's a direct encounter with the divine within. It comes through meditation, through silence, through the practice of turning inward and asking, who am I really? Not your name, not your role, not your story. Who is the awareness behind all of that? The mystics call this self-inquiry. The Gnostics called it the journey through the archons, facing each layer of false identity until only the true self remains. Mary Magdalene's teaching, according to the Gospel of Mary, was about this very journey. She described the soul ascending through powers like desire, ignorance, wrath, and death, each one trying to claim the soul, to convince it that it belongs to the material realm. But the awakened soul says no. I am not desire. I am not fear. I am not this body or this lifetime. I am a child of the true God, the infinite source beyond the demiurge, beyond all forms and names. And as the soul speaks this truth, the powers lose their grip. The illusions fall away. Second, you must reclaim the divine feminine within yourself, regardless of whether you're male or female. This isn't about gender, it's about the mode of consciousness that the feminine represents. Receptivity instead of aggression, intuition instead of rigid logic, flow instead of control, heart instead of head. The world has been dominated by masculine energy, by force, by domination, by systems that value power over connection. This has created the imbalance we see everywhere. But the pendulum is swinging back, and you, by honoring the feminine within, by listening to your inner knowing, by trusting the whispers of your soul, are part of that rebalancing. Third, and this is crucial, you must recognize that the enemy is not outside. The real archons are not secret cabals or reptilian overlords, though those symbols can be useful. The real archons are the voices in your head that say you're not good enough, the programming that keeps you distracted and divided from your true self, the belief systems that tell you you're small, limited, powerless. These are the seals on the library, and you break them by choosing awareness over automaticity, presence over distraction, truth over comfort. Mary Magdalene's greatest teaching, the one Hall spent his life trying to illuminate, is this: you are already free. You just forgot. The prison has no walls. It's made of belief, and the moment you see through it, it disappears. Now we come to the heart of it all. If you've made it this far, you're not here for shallow answers or comforting lies. You're here because something deep inside recognizes this truth, even if your mind is still resisting. Let's go all the way. Mary Magdalene, as Hall understood her, is not just a historical figure. She is an archetype, a living symbol of the soul's potential to awaken and return home. In Jungian terms, she represents the anima, the feminine soul force that guides the masculine ego through the process of individualization. In Gnostic terms, she is Sophia, wisdom embodied, the spark of the true God trapped in matter and fighting her way back to the light. In esoteric Christianity, she is the sacred bride, the one who completes the Christ, the union of masculine and feminine divine energies that represents the ultimate goal of spiritual evolution. When the Gospel of Philip speaks of Christ kissing Mary Magdalene, literalists get scandalized. But the mystics understand. This is not a romance. This is a mystical marriage, the union of opposites, the sacred alchemy that transforms lead into gold, ego into enlightenment, human into divine. It's the same symbolism found in Tantra, in alchemy, in every mystical tradition. The masculine and feminine principles, when united within the soul, create the philosopher's stone, the elixir of immortality, the realized being who has transcended duality. Mary Magdalene, in this light, is not just a companion or disciple. She is the initiator, the one who awakens the divine masculine by embodying the divine feminine. She is the Grail herself, the vessel that holds the sacred blood, the lineage of consciousness that carries the Gnosis from age to age. The legends of Mary fleeing to France after the crucifixion, carrying the holy bloodline, are not about DNA or physical descendants. They're about the transmission of secret teachings, the preservation of the Gnosis through underground channels, the mystery schools and secret societies that kept the flame alive when the institutional church was burning heretics. Hall was part of that lineage, whether he knew it or not. His life's work was to decode the symbols, to translate the ancient teachings into language that modern seekers could understand, to point back to the source before it was corrupted. And at the heart of those teachings is always the same message. You are divine, you are eternal, you are not this body, this mind, this temporary form. You are the consciousness that animates it all. If what you're hearing right now is shaking something loose inside you, if it feels like a memory returning rather than new information, then do something. Comment below and tell me what's waking up in you. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so we can keep digging into these forbidden truths together. Because this isn't just content, this is a transmission, and your participation is how it spreads. So where does this leave you? Right now, in your life, wherever you are, you have a choice. You can go back to sleep, dismiss all of this as interesting but irrelevant, and return to the comfortable prison of consensus reality. Or you can accept the invitation. The invitation Mary Magdalene has been extending for 2,000 years. The invitation to wake up, to remember, to reclaim the divine spark that no system, no doctrine, no archon can ever truly touch. This is not easy. The path of Gnosis never is. When you start to see through the illusions, when you begin to access the sealed library within, the world pushes back. People will call you crazy. Systems will try to pull you back into conformity. Your own mind, programmed by years of conditioning, will resist and doubt and fear. But you're not alone. There are others waking up right now all over the world, feeling the same pull, asking the same questions, remembering the same forgotten truths. You're part of something much bigger than one lifetime, one religion, one story. You're part of the eternal return of the divine feminine, the restoration of balance, the age of unveiling. And Mary Magdalene, whatever she was historically, whatever her true story might be, is the symbol of that return. She is the one who stands at the threshold and says, "Come, remember who you are." Hall spent 70 years trying to show people the way. He wrote thousands of pages, gave thousands of lectures, built a library of esoteric wisdom that still stands today as a beacon for seekers. And what was his message at the core of it all? That every human being is an initiate in the making. That the mysteries are not locked away in secret temples or forbidden texts. They're inside you, written in the structure of your consciousness, waiting for you to turn inward and read them. Mary Magdalene's gospel, her gnosis, her forbidden knowledge, is not a set of doctrines to believe, it's an experience to have. It's the moment when you realize in the depths of your being that you are not a victim of circumstance, not a sinner waiting for salvation, not a biological machine destined for oblivion. You are a divine spark, eternal and indestructible, temporarily dreaming the dream of being human. And when you wake up from that dream fully and completely, you become what the Gnostics called the Christos, the Anointed One, the enlightened being who has remembered and can never forget again. This is your inheritance. This is what they tried to hide from you, the truth that you don't need them, you never did. The priests, the institutions, the systems of control, they all depend on you believing you're powerless, incomplete, in need of external salvation. But Mary Magdalene's message, the gnosis she guarded, the knowledge Hall spent his life illuminating, says otherwise. You are complete. You are whole. You are already home. You just forgot how to see it. So what do you do now? You practice, you meditate, you turn inward, you question everything you've been told and verify it against your own direct experience. You honor the divine feminine within you by listening to your intuition, trusting your inner knowing, allowing your heart to guide you instead of just your head. You seek out the hidden teachings, not to collect information, but to trigger remembrance. You connect with others on the path because the journey is easier when you're not walking alone. And most importantly, you live. You don't hide in monasteries or wait for death to set you free. You bring the gnosis into every moment, every interaction, every choice. You become a living embodiment of the truth Mary Magdalene carried, the truth that terrified the archons and the institutions they control. The truth that the divine is here now within you, accessible at every moment, waiting only for your recognition. This is the revolution Hall spoke about, not political, not violent, not external. A revolution of consciousness, a mass awakening, the return of the divine feminine and the restoration of the sacred balance. And it begins with you, right here, right now, choosing to remember what you've always known deep down. You are not a slave, you are not a sinner. You are not small, limited, or powerless. You are a fragment of infinity, a spark of the divine source wearing the temporary costume of a human being, and the moment you truly remember that, everything changes. The prison dissolves, the archons lose their power, the sealed library opens, and you step into your true identity as an eternal, sovereign, divine being. This is the forbidden knowledge. This is what Mary Magdalene guarded. This is what Manly P. Hall spent his life revealing. And now it's yours. The only question is, what will you do with it? Will you dismiss it, forget it, go back to the comfortable illusion? Or will you accept the call, walk the path, and become what you've always been meant to be? The choice, as it always has been, is yours. But know this, once you hear the truth, once it resonates in the depths of your soul, you can't truly unhear it. It will haunt you, call to you, pull at you, until you finally surrender and remember. So welcome home, initiate. The journey has just begun, and Mary Magdalene, from wherever she is in the eternal now, is smiling, because another soul has found the key to the sealed library and is finally waking up.